Hi everyone, welcome to the Conscious Cities Festival. Thank you for joining us from all around the world. If you're on Zoom here or joining through the other platforms live on Facebook, we're excited to share this special event with you. This year's festival is a special one, the first of our events represented by a truly grassroots movement created by practitioners, researchers, innovators, and activists. Today, we are kicking off a week-long global dialogue about the future city. The festival's collective vision is the culmination of a dispersed network of like-minded groups, asking questions that are universally relevant to human existence and applying them to their localities. I want to say a huge congratulations to everyone involved. It has been an honor to work with all of you to make this collective vision happen. More than anything, it's been a joy to watch a group of people dedicated to collaboration and positive impact. The feeling is that we've quickly become a family. The CCD, as Grace, who you see here also puts it, has some magic. And I think that magic is the trust that glues this community together. We can say with some pride that we've created a space free of sectoral politics and of corporate interests, a space for open dialogue and critical thinking. We're still young, and for that we want to extend our gratitude for everyone's patience through our growing pains. We get bigger every year, and this year the world asked us to do it faster than we could keep up with. But we have big plans for the future, and you'll hear more from Grace about that. I want to keep it short because we have a packed and exciting program. We're so honored to have our keynote speakers, Aydah Paris, Tiffany Shlain, and Upali Nanda with us today, and we want to leave the talking to them. I'm excited to begin the global dialogue today with an opening performance to the festival called To Shape and Be Shaped. I had the honor to work with choreographer and dancer Snir Nakar and a small talented team who made magic happen. Upali Nanda, who is delivering today's final keynote, co-wrote the script and delivered its enchanting narration. We hope that it will be a catalyst for today's dialogue in the same way that the festival can be a catalyst for a continued global one. A dialogue towards understanding ourselves and where we're heading. Perhaps, I suspect, in the end, we will find that we are left with more questions than answers. A good thing, because the only way to create a conscious city is to keep on asking, what is a conscious city?
What is skin but a medium to connect me to what is around me, and what is around me to me? What is my breath but a conversation between inhalation and exhalation? And what is movement but a coming together of body, brain, and space? Our senses may be complicit in the illusion of separation, but consciousness is shaped from the blurring of infinite connections. access to. So the questions, my friend, I pose to you is how the city you live in lives in you. And how, as you draft your intent and craft its manifest, will you shape our image in this world and not the world in our image? Always on the move, but where are we going? We are busy, 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 and it's showing. And yet, we can feel it, humanity slowing, an inertia that has seeped in as we have kept going. The choices we have made were not made in a vacuum. They came from a place of learning and wisdom. They came from a confidence of doing what is right. And therein lies our foundational fight. Must we unlearn to be able to learn again? And how must our actions ripple out to form the voids for unlearning? It will be from these voids that we rebuild our places, the places where intents gather to shape and be shaped. The places where we rebuild our time and our space. Cities that are conscious, learning and unlearning, defining and blurring, seeing and being, breathing again as living organisms do, changing and being changed, evolving, devolving, but always transforming. Knowing that a human city, a living city, does not strive for constancy. It strives for consciousness.
Thanks, Itai, for such an amazing video and to everyone who helped to create it. So, hello. Here at the Center for Conscious Design, we have a simple, continually more metamorphosizing goal. We believe that design can and must meet and respond to the needs of people and communities. The CCD is kind of like a flying kite in a windstorm. The wind wants us to soar, and we're doing our best to keep up. You know, in the same way, Itai and I joke that the world wants us to expand faster than we can. Just over the past few months, our network of fellows, followers, and champions has more than tripled. From June until now, we've introduced more than 30 new chapters in research areas. We've expanded to all corners of the globe. We've brought on over 25 new fellows across every continent around the world, and we're doing this all without any real source of funding. So before I can explain to you what we see to be the future of conscious design, I'd like to pass the mic and ask you, what does the future of conscious design look like to you? So just go ahead and type your answers in the chat. I'll give you a minute to do that. For the Center for Conscious Design, this first and foremost looks like constantly searching for new ways to incorporate intersectionality, equity, and research into the core of our organization. It looks like a series of projects currently in the works, thanks to the incredible work of our fellows. At this moment, we're creating the first journal of science-informed design and Conscious Design Academy. We're developing a Conscious Studies Index and certification program. We're opening up the possibility for outside partnerships to host curated panels of CCD fellow advisors. We're pioneering a shared language project to communicate conscious design across cultures. We're constructing a conscious design network where you can gain access to special events and content, network with other experts in conscious design, earn discounts on future offerings, submit blog posts, and help keep our movement grassroots growing and out of the hands of corporate interests. So now that you've had a chance to think about what conscious design means to you, I'm going to tell you what I think it is. I think it's you. And if you agree, if this feeds your soul like it does mine and all of our fellows, then I encourage you to reach out, to email me, to join our network, to partner with us, to become a founder and pioneer in the conscious design movement, because there is no movement without you and your support, and there is no conscious cities without consciousness. Now, before we jump into anything else, I'm going to show two different videos, the first in anthology and the second on how you can create your own code for designing how you want to be during this festival.
Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth and I'm the editor of the 2020 Conscious Cities Anthology, To Shape and Be Shaped, for the first time coming to you as a downloadable print format. And so the anthology is finally out. It launched on October 12th, and I'm really excited to share it with everyone. It's truly been a labor of love from all of the contributors who have put in so much work and have provided a lot of really interesting topics for us this year. Of course, asking the crucial question, how can we build smarter, better cities, and exploring the effects of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the effects of the urban environment on more vulnerable populations, such as children and senior citizens. Of course, there are some themes too about how our built environment shapes us as well, keeping with the theme of the editorial. So go ahead and give it a read. I'm really excited to hear what people think about it. So yeah, thanks.
Hi everyone, Trish Hanson here in my backyard in Adelaide, South Australia, and pretty excited to be contributing to the global conversations around the things that shape our cities and then how they in turn shape us. As we know, we're doing this in a myriad of ways every day, in ways that we barely understand, through our actions and behaviours, but also through our interactions and the way that we treat each other and the intentions we hold for our places and our cities. So as part of this conversation, you're invited to develop a design code for your city. That is, finding the words that best describe how you want your city to be. You can do this using the Being app, which is available on thebeingcode.net, and it's free to download on Apple iTunes and Google Play. Now, because it's not collecting any data, your only way of sharing this with other people around the world is for you to share it on your social channels. So please do that using the hashtags, and we look forward to hearing about the intentions that you hold for your city through your design code.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you so much. And also for everything you've done at the CCD. I think anyone who's involved with the CCD knows what you've contributed and the energy that you give and the love that you give to this family. So thank you as well. We're going to move on to the most exciting part, our keynote speakers. We have our first keynote speaker, Aydah Paris. Aydah is a futurist, a cultural strategist, and a storyteller. Aydah's ability to spot patterns and understand where narratives are heading and encourage collective introspection is the reason why we are so excited to have her. I saw her speak twice, last year in Portugal. In one talk, she was wearing a vibrant kind of suit, and she was so outgoing and telling people about her experience. And then the second keynote came, and she was suddenly quiet and thinking and reflective, and a different side of her came out. And I think this is the magic of Aydah. We get to see all of these different aspects from her. So thank you very much for being with us. It's my honor to introduce our first keynote speaker, Aydah Paris.
Wow, what an introduction. I feel like I'm underdressed. I'm just going to share my screen with you all. Let's hopefully works. Okay, hopefully you can see that first quote. Yes? So, let's see if this works. The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. And Itai said that at the very beginning. And for me, sometimes those stories reveal deeper truths, and they amplify what's really going on underneath the social, cultural, political stories of our times. And sometimes I feel that we need to take a deeper look beneath the surface of those stories to ask ourselves those big questions. And technology can be a tool to help that happen. So some of you may recognize this image. It is Hieronymus Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights, a triptych. Bosch was an artist. He was also a world builder. And Bill Burnett says, we interrogate the world by making, and what he did through his art was to make this world. Now, the Garden of Earthly Delights, he was created between 1490 and 1510. And it's 3 panels. The left panel is meant to represent paradise. The right panel is meant to represent hell, and the center panel is meant to represent the Garden of Earthly Delights. And is it a moral warning about what he saw happening in the world? And then recently, a friend of mine, we were talking about some of this, and a friend of mine said, we were talking about what's going on in the world and why are we having these, why does it seem like more and more people are having these kind of conversations? And he said, that we have become disconnected from the vastness of our experiences, that we've forgotten that the earth is a living system and that we as humans are an interconnected and inseparable part of that. And so my question then became, well, what would a modern day triptych look like? So we all know that we're in this middle of this pandemic. And as a systems thinker and a person who recognizes patterns, there were 3 key themes that started to emerge for me. Just looking at what was happening around the world and how we were interacting and how our stories were changing. The first is that as humans, most of us, much of the world, especially in the West, we divide, we conquer, we build borders, but sometimes we don't think about what are the bigger, longer, deeper implications of those borders. We've done it with land, we've done it with ideas, with people, with cultures, with technologies, with even artifacts. Colonization has many forms. Colonization of the mind, of the body, of action, of experience, of voices, of thought, of technology, of rituals, of behaviours, even the perceived rights of usage and ownership over language. However, during the lockdown, we started to see some of that start to fall apart when we saw the rise of the resurgence of hyperlocal communities. And my question with this was, if those borders can be so readily removed, why do many still exist? The second thing that we saw is that there was definitely a change in our relationship with climate change. There was a change in the way that we saw the planet, what was happening. We saw smog levels reduce, but my question was about why is that happening? Not only are we staying still, but what was the impetus to make us stay still? And for me, a lot of that was around this idea that the risk to ourselves, our fear of dying from the pandemic, meant that we stopped traveling. And so there was also this element of there's this choice. And it flagged up this question of, is our relationship with climate change more of a moral battle between what we know is right and what we actually decide to do. And I think the thing that connects those two is capitalism. The fact that we stopped traveling, as much as we say that many of us say that we can become vegan and we can have all this, we want to fight the planet, we'll go and protest marches. Some will still buy that flight to fly to Bali to go and do the yoga retreat because you can. And I feel that capitalism, money is the thing that is mitigating, that it sits between those two things. So if we go back to if we go back to Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights, what does that look like now? Well, the left, instead of the Garden of Eden, is colonialism. The move away from recognizing that we're connected with the planet and our relationship with it. The right, rather than hell, is our relationship with climate change and this destruction that we are creating. And the middle, that moral compass that divides between the two, is capitalism. And I saw that pattern somewhere before. And that disease, that's what I call the ecological triptych, the relationship between colonialism, capitalism, and climate change. But that the disease or dis-ease of what was causing that is the ego. And I saw that pattern somewhere before, and it was Freud's. Colonialism is the id, capitalism is the superego. Sorry, climate change is the superego, and capitalism is the id, the ego that mediates between those two. So what's the role of a designer or a futurist or an innovator? Well, I see them as the artist. And a friend of mine, a mentor, read me this beautiful quote because I was struggling as an artist. I was like, well, I haven't produced anything. I don't paint. And this beautiful quote, the artist of the future might be adept with brushes and paints or with film, but they will also have the skill of an architect, a geologist, a public speaker, a politician, or a scientist. What will identify him or her as an artist is an interest in art's true historic mission, the promotion of sensory understanding of what matters the most in life. They will create occasions like this conference, which might mean a tower, a crater, a dinner party, a kindergarten, for events will promote the values to which art has always been devoted. And that's how I see an artist. That's how I see the designers, that we are world builders and we have an opportunity to do that. So the challenge is, how do we do that? How do we tell new stories? How do we create conscious citizens and therefore conscious cities? How do we shape or be shaped by the world around us? And I believe that we start with values. So I'm going to share my conscious values that I put in everything that I do and with all the relationships I have in terms of work. So the first, we need to take individual and collective responsibility to cultural and economic sustainability. We have to think long term. There's a Long Now Foundation in San Francisco that talks about long now thinking, not how are we going to build something to last for now, how are we going to build things that last past our generation? What is we as individuals, so we can recycle. But once we've done that recycling, we still have a responsibility to think about what happens when those things leave us. What are those longer term implications? The second one is that we're a human ecology, interconnected and interdependent, in a perpetual state of growth and transformation. We're always in a state of flow. Nothing is ever solid. There's always this sense of movement. And so we have to remember that culture and ecosystems are always in constant states of flow. And that's how we start to approach when we're designing them, to know that they're going to change, because that is the beauty of them. To me, culture is collective storytelling. And so when we build cultures, we're building in the stories of those people who are part of those cultures. And the more people who come in, the more that culture changes, the more those stories change. And so that is why I believe we have to remember that everything that we're approaching is in a state of flow. The third one, a culture where human and humanity and planetary-centered KPIs are a measure of individual, strategic and commercial success. That when we start to look at things, when we're starting to think about what are our measures of success as a business, as designers, then we have to connect all of them to say that they're human, their humanity and planetary measures of success. And I build those into what I'm doing with myself, with my work and with people. The next one is that We need to build cultures where curiosity, autonomy, and collective intelligence lead to systemic innovation. That innovation is not a top-down approach, that we as humans are problem solvers by default, which means that we all have the potential to be innovators. We all have the potential to do that. And that idea of building these decentralized, flatter structures where we encourage curiosity, because we had that as children, and a lot of us get that educated out of us. But the idea of curiosity, autonomy, and play helps us to build these ideas. It helps us to work out how to solve problems in a very different way. And innovation then becomes systemic, because everybody has the potential to do that. The ideas don't just come from one person. The next one is a culture of common unity. The creation of a culture where the vision and the mission and the values of the organization reflect the individual and collective identities, beliefs and values, and the ethics, because sometimes that's left out, of its internal ecosystem. So there's a brilliant paper by Umar Haque that is called the Betterness Manifesto. And what he talks about is, rather than creating just value statements, why don't we create Betterness Manifestos that talk about and are inclusive of how we're going to make our lives better, the lives of our employees and the people we work with better, the lives of our communities, the lives of the world and the lives of the planet. I think that is where we start to think about common unity, of bringing these things together, where there is enthusiasm, passion, creativity and shared storytelling. The next one is a decentralized culture of trust and transparency and creative problem solving for all. And this is really about building those types of relationships that recognize the human in each other, to recognize that we are all trying to work towards the same. Many of us are trying, I won't say all, given what's happening around the world at the moment, many of us, and I'm sure all of us on this call, are all trying to work towards the same goals or very similar goals. And so we build that, as I said, that decentralized bottom up trust and transparency, because it's really about a return on the relationship rather than a return on investment. And then the last one is a conscious culture where planetary environmental impact and sustainability are also a measure of success. So we're not just looking at creating a measure of success that is about market share or profitability or all of those things. It's about how do we make sure that we build in planetary and environmental impact as a measure of our success at the beginning and not as an afterthought. And that's where for me, it was about starting to create this idea of a conscious Anthropocene, a conscious knowledge of the impact that we're having and the ripples that we create in the world. Because all of those, when you have those values, it then leads you to create your own hypothesis for change. So my father's Nigerian, Igbo, and there is a beautiful, I've recently discovered it, there is this beautiful concept called Mbari, where they believe that art is a form of citizenship. And so there is no one artist, that everybody has the potential to be an artist, because it is your civic duty to be an artist, to be a world builder, to be a designer. And so when it comes to the time of the year, members of the community are chosen, they move to a particular house and they all work as artists to build this house, because that is their civic responsibility. And that's how I see the world and design. Regenerative design is world building, which is art, which is Mbari, which is citizenship. And that then for me is how we start to approach this idea of the ego that I talked about in the ecological triptych. And where could we head? Well, if we tackle colonialism and we diminish the ego, then we have a different approach to distribution of resources. If we tackle climate change, we have a different approach to looking at food security. And if we tackle capitalism, we have a different approach to equity, which is benefit for all. So hopefully I've given you some stuff to think about. If you have some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Now we're going to go into a couple of videos from our local chapters so you can get a better idea of the different events that we have throughout the week.
Hello, we are Conscious Bangalore. There are 11 of us, wide awake, curious, and driven to spark, strategize, and implement conscious design of Indian cities, starting with our own city, Bangalore. As the first local chapter in the network, we hosted the inaugural Conscious Cities event, 56 Urban Unraveling and Utopia, in July 2019. Since then, we have collaborated with and brought together diverse organizations dealing with local governance, public policy, design education, mental health, urban analytics, as well as civic and grassroots activation. At this year's Conscious Cities Festival, Conscious Bangalore's Person Space Exchange celebrates the ecosystem of people who create space, catalyze transformation, and activate communities, all to make a positive impact on Bangaloreans. Firstly, we have curated dialogues with 7 city-making mavericks, followed by a live panel discussion with them. Secondly, we will also launch Kalpavriksha, a forum for students to share and learn science-informed and human impact-driven design projects. Thirdly, we are hosting online an incredibly exciting 3-day workshop on creative coding for conscious design. So, register as soon as you can and tune into our channel on 20th of October on a screen of your choice, and join us for this year's festival in Bengaluru, celebrating the Person Space Exchange.
Hi, I'm Meredith.
Hi, I'm Miriam. We are from Denver, Colorado. Denver is known as the Mile High City because at the base of the Rocky Mountains, it is 5,280 feet above sea level. That's 1.6 kilometers to the rest of the world.
In 2020, we launched a Conscious Denver chapter to bring together local champions who share a passion for creating a city responsive to user needs. Our Conscious Cities Festival event is Shaping Health. I actually chose this theme before the pandemic, but as a result of the pandemic, now more than ever, everyone is experiencing firsthand how the environment plays a role in putting people at risk and impacting health. We find ourselves at a transformative moment in history. Cities are in turn responding and revitalizing to create more health-promoting, disease-combating infrastructures and elevate all of our well-being.
We have a great group of speakers who will share how they are shaping health in very different ways. We have 2 health professionals who oversee a hospital to set the stage for what health means, a behavioral scientist who measures human-environment interactions, an architect who designs beauty to help us reduce stress, a champion for preventing homelessness, and a change agent for transit equity.
Even if you're not local to Colorado, we invite you to join our online event, and we hope we might inspire some ways you can shape health in your local communities.
So as you can see, we have tons of different chapters, amazing speakers, lots of exciting things happening. So on that note, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker today, Tiffany Shlain. I have been a huge fan of Tiffany from years ago when my mom showed me one of her videos. She is an Emmy-nominated filmmaker, speaker, founder of the Webby Awards. She has her own film studio, Let It Ripple, and it's really a visionary. So I'll let Tiffany take it from here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. I just getting chills all morning. It's fantastic. So let's see. I'm so happy that this event is happening. And this is one of the blessings of the pandemic, that we're from everywhere and we're all caring about the same issue and coming together. And I'm super interested in this issue and how the web can bring us together. And I'm really interested in the words smart city, smartphone. And I think when I was younger, I wanted to be smart, and now I want to be wise. And I think that's an interesting distinction that we're going to make. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and how it's affected the way I think of conscious cities and conscious living today. So my background is that I founded the Webby Awards. So in my 20s, the web was this new medium. If you can imagine, there was only like a handful of us online. Well, it was like 10 million, but now it's over, half the planet. And it was so exciting and utopian. We thought, here's this medium and it's gonna change the way we communicate and the way we connect and the way we share ideas. And it was super exciting to be in that early period and kind of honor the best of the web and kind of push the standards up and say, this is excellence. And then every year people would look at it and try to push up against it. So I think that's what conscious cities are. It's like, here's examples of excellence and let's do more of it. And that's really what I was doing in the early part of my career. And then now you have to remember the web at the beginning was a nonprofit public utility. That was the goal. And then of course, capitalism came in and the business model was, let's make sure they're staring at the screen all the time so we can sell them more things. And they will think that it is free, but really we become the product. And when that business model happened, I think the web took the wrong turn. And I think we're living in the result of it because we're all staring at screens all the time. And there's so much good, I should say, of course, like this event is a beautiful example, but there's so much just endless scrolling and it's not using the best of us. It's not bringing out the best of us. And I know there was a period where the smartphone came out, again, that term smart, and I was feeling distracted all the time. And so before the smartphone, you were on the web at work. And then when you left your home, you were out in space, you were in your city, you were talking to the people you were with. You didn't have this device that was constantly interrupting you from the moment and space that you were in. And I was feeling so distracted. I felt like I wasn't present for anything, like I wasn't anywhere. That's what I felt. I was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I was traveling around for work all the time. I was on my phone. I wasn't paying attention to what was around me. And then in a period of days, I lost my father to brain cancer and my daughter was born. And it felt like life was grabbing me by the shoulders and going, what are you doing? What's important? What matters? And what mattered to me was being present. And my husband, who, by the way, Adah is from Nigeria. He was born in Nigeria. Yeah, that connection. But he's a professor of robotics at UC Berkeley. And I should say we're both Jewish, but we're not religious. And there's this concept called Shabbat. It's also called the Sabbath. And it's this concept of a day of rest. And right now in modern society, only the really observant religious people do this day of rest. But 11 years ago, when my father died and my husband's and my daughter was born, we were like, enough. We have to bring some presence back into our lives. So from Friday night to Saturday night, we turned off all screens. We were part of this National Day of Unplugging that was kind of doing it ceremonially. And it felt so good and such an oasis of calm to rethink a day of rest in the modern society, which to us meant no screens. So that was almost 11 years ago that we started doing it, and we never stopped doing it. Every week, we're on the web, we're using it, we're like connecting and creating, and then I run towards Friday night. Friday night, we make a beautiful meal. We always have family and friends over now with the pandemic outside at a distance, but it's very social Friday. But people know that they're coming to our house. There's no screens for that tech Shabbat dinner. And it's the best conversation of the week. We're like reclaiming space. No one's pulling out their phone at a moment of silence. No one's showing us something on the phone. We're all there in one conversation, tasting the food. I laugh more on Friday night. I connect more. And I sleep the best on Friday night. And that's important. I have problems sleeping. I don't know if any of you here. So that's like a big win for me. And then our home turns into this different space. And there's this idea that Shabbat is a palace in time. So there's temples and palaces in space, and this is a palace in time. So our house on Saturday morning, I do a lot of writing. I read in a completely different way because during the week we're reading more than ever, but we're skim reading because we're so distracted. We're like reading headlines, we're skimming through it onto the next thing, more, next notification, next news headline, next interesting article. We're just eating. And Aydah, I'm so glad you showed Bosh, that image, because the web, when it took that left turn, that business model, it is speaking to our animal instincts. We can never get enough. And that is the most stunning feeling that I feel every week. Because like, mind you, like every week I have this feeling where during the week, I just like, I'm hungry. I'm hungry for ideas. I'm hungry for news. I'm hungry for stressful things. I'm hungry. I'm hungry for those boots that keep showing up in an ad next to my email. I want this, I want that. I can't get enough. I'm never satiated, because right now, the way this 24/7 culture is, what it's doing is it's playing to our amygdala and our animal instincts and our desires. But I'll tell you what happens when I turn off the screens every week. It is like all of that gets quiet. And you know what turns on Saturday morning when I get up early and I write and I read and I think? It turns on my prefrontal cortex. And I suddenly get to think and reflect and appreciate. So all week, I can never get enough. I turn off the screens. Suddenly I appreciate what's right in front of me. And after doing this practice for so long, and society was getting more and more addicted to the screens, I just wrote a book. It's coming out in paperback on Tuesday, but the hardcover came out last year. And it was so fun to think about all the ways that it had benefited my life. And I called the book 24/6 to kind of play against, why is 24/7 a goal? Why is it that we're like, I'm open 24/7 and 24/7? Why do you want to live in a society that's 24/7 where there's no downtime? There's no time for thinking, and there's no time for the inner world, because Saturday is a lot about the inner world for me. Like eventually my kids, after I've been like journaling for hours, and I really do journal for like 3 hours before they get up. And even that word journaling, I know I'm writing, I'm thinking, I'm unpacking and processing and digesting so much of what has happened during the week. And right now we are living in a way where we're optimizing every friggin' second. You go for a walk, you listen to the podcast. You're always on your phone. You're like, I'm going to do this while I'm doing this. While I'm listening to this, while I'm taking a shower, I'm going to listen to the news. Let me just tell you, I make a lot of films on neuroscience. You are literally filling space that your brain does its magical work. There's a term in neuroscience called the default mode network. And what it means, it's the reason why you usually have your best ideas when you're doing the dishes, when you're taking a shower, when you're going for a walk. And what it is it's everything that's already in your brain, everything you've read and thought about, and it gets to process and connect in new ways. And that's creativity. That's why you have those insights when there's no new stimulation coming in, because there's so much stimulation already in there. So I think about like, what's the default mode network of a city? What are the places in a city where you can think? There's parks, there's libraries, there's public art, there are churches and temples if you want to go there, but what are the spaces where we value reflection and inner thinking? Because I know for one day every week in my home for 11 years with my husband and our 2 daughters now who are 17 and 11, our home feels totally different. During the week, we're all on Zoom, school, teaching, whatever. Everyone's doing a million things. And then this one day, we have this gorgeous Friday night meal. And I mean gorgeous because of the conversation and the connection. And then Saturday, after I've done my reading and journaling, it's kind of a chill, quiet day. And we will go out and take a walk. We'll read, we'll nap, we'll play music. We do nothing. Doing nothing is okay. Like doing nothing, it's when all that magic happens, and we're never giving ourselves that time for that magic. And some of the other things I've thought a lot about over almost 11 years of doing this practice of living 24/6, which is what I call it, is first of all, it's great for the environment. Just imagine if everyone on earth didn't consume for a day, didn't do, produce, and create for a day. And I love that this is a 3,000-year-old practice. It's actually ancient wisdom, a day of rest. And it was totally radical when it first came around. People used to work every day. And then this concept of a day of rest, truly do nothing for a day. It's a very powerful idea. And if you think of rest as a technology, technologies make things more efficient. If you truly rest, you're going to be more efficient. And for me, because I am such a big writer of my ideas on Saturday, all my best ideas hands down come on Saturday. They don't come when I'm running around doing a million things. My best ideas come when I sit in that morning on Saturday morning with some books, some articles I've wanted to read deeply, but I didn't have time during the week. And I really think comes more on Saturday. And you know, the day I feel most productive, my husband and I always say this, is on Sunday. It is just proven, there's research behind this. If you truly rest, you will produce better. So people think, oh, I've got so much to do, I can't take a break. Well, my paperback is coming out on Tuesday. And I'm making a film for the election. I am so busy. And I took a full day off yesterday and I needed it so badly. And I know it's going to make my final edits of this election film better. I'll have better energy next week. And so I think we need to truly understand, just because that phone is right next to you, you can just flip it any second, it's not the best way to live. It's not the best way to live for your prefrontal cortex. And for me, I do all these strategies that I talk about in the book, the other 6 days, all these like interventions, like I don't look at the phone in the morning, and I have this book that I write in, and no phones at dinner, not at every meal, just dinner. I talk about all these other things I do, but those are harder for me during the week. It's much easier on Friday night when the phones go in the drawer and no one's looking at them. It's like not on the table, that my whole family is not on the screen for a full 24 hours. So it makes me feel more connected to myself, my family. I feel more joy. I laugh more. I sleep better. I have better creative ideas. It's better for the environment. And it gives me a sense of connection to the world, because I actually can really think about my connection to the world in a whole new way. And I think about, as we're creating, for that painting, I'm so glad you showed that painting. I think that the Bosch painting was so perfect, because it's like, what kind of world do we want to live in? Do we want to create a world that is just designed for desire and wanting and hunger? Or do we want to create space in our own home, in our own cities, for reflection and thinking? And, my 17-year-old daughter, in the heat of the pandemic, that first month when people were really, there was a lot of fear, and our 17-year-old daughter on our tech Shabbat, which is what we call it, said, our tech Shabbats are the only day I don't feel like I'm in quarantine. And I thought that was so deep, because it was like she was saying, and it's the word I use to describe the feeling when I turn off all the notifications and really turn off the outside world for a day. It's the day I feel the most free and liberated, because we don't realize that we have so many things influencing our thoughts. And I love the word you used about colonizing the mind. Whoever you follow on social media or the news, you're just letting them basically shape your brain. So shape or be shaped. What are you letting into your brain? Because if you let in stressful news all the time, if you're following people that are posting things that are not inspiring or make you think, you're letting your brain be shaped by outside forces that are not good. And I really highly curate my social media, not on Twitter. I'm very open on Twitter, and I follow lots of different people, but on my other platforms like Instagram and Facebook, I'm very curated, because I don't want to follow people that just post about their life. I don't want to follow people that just post about things that I don't feel like are authentic. I want to be challenged. I want to be inspired, but it's like, I feel like I am a curator of my brain. And we all need to have a lot more respect for the input. There's so much input in our brains. And, when I first had my daughters, I remember the doctor saying, don't overstimulate. If you're at a loud party, you should really take your baby out of that overstimulation. It's not good for the brain to be overstimulated. Well, we're all being overstimulated right now, all the time. There's billboards trying to sell us. There's phones blinking at us. There's news coming at us. There's emails. We are overstimulated every frickin' second of the day. And you have the power to turn it off. It's incredibly liberating. And I think ultimately people are scared to turn off their phone. And I'll tell you what I think that comes with is they're scared with being by themselves. And I think where that comes from is that every great wisdom practice from every culture in every corner of this globe says that we need to still the wind on the water to hear that inner voice that says you need to quit that job and do something more meaningful, that you need to live a more meaningful life. That's the inner voice. We have to quiet the noise to hear that voice. And I think that that wisdom of once a week, quiet the noise, is one of the most profound ideas I've ever encountered. And I wanted to liberate it from just being for people that are really religious, which is beautiful, but I'm not a religious person, but I found such wisdom in this idea. And I want everyone to be able to engage with it and really appreciate what's right in front of you. So right before the pandemic, I had a show at the Museum of Modern Art in New York called Dear Human. And it was because before the pandemic, remember, you're walking down the street in New York City and everyone's staring at their phones. People are bumping into each other because no one's looking at what's right in front of them. And my great hope for this period after the pandemic, I know when I see my friends, my family, like my heart is like about to jump out of my chest. I'm so excited to see another human. My hope from this, all these incredible lessons from this pandemic, is that when we leave this social desert of not seeing people that much, we're going to put down the frigging phones and be present with our surroundings and the people right in front of us. It's great respect, just like it's great respect to wear a mask. It is great respect. Attention is the highest form of generosity. And I have noticed so many beautiful things by just turning off the phone and walking around, and we don't do that anymore. So I think I will leave you that we have to create spaces in our lives, in our minds, to reflect and to think deeply and to hear that inner voice. And that can be in your home or in any city. And I am so grateful that you were all coming together to really wrestle with this idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. That was amazing. So now I'm going to go into a couple more videos from our local chapters and continue to share what everyone's planning. So I'm going to start with Parris.
In French, there's a saying, Paris est une fête. But this year, Paris est un festival. We are hosting Conscious Paris, the Paris chapter of the Conscious Cities Festival, aiming at better understanding how people can strive in the city and how social capital can be fostered. Together with City, a team of experts in urbanism and human behavior, we have invited specialists in architecture, landscape design, economy, sociology, and human behavior to discuss this important and urgent question of social capital in the city under crisis. See you on October 22nd.
Hello, I'm Amowi Phillips with Mofra Foundation.
And I'm Rachel Phillips with Mofra Foundation. We're excited to host Accra's debut at the first all-virtual Conscious Cities Festival. Accra is a growing city in every sense. It's the largest population center in Ghana and one of the largest cities in Africa. As the first African chapter at the Center for Conscious Design, we aim to highlight interdisciplinary, intergenerational work that is transforming cities in the global south. From October 20th to 22nd, we'll be engaging in a series of conscious conversations about the roles that children, nature, and culture play in shaping Accra's future. We hope you'll join us in exploring these questions. How does Accra's rich cultural heritage shape the urban environment? How will we preserve the biodiversity of the region as the city expands? And, most importantly, how do we give Accra's youth access to their natural and cultural heritage, shaping a new generation of stewards for the 21st century? We can't wait to connect with you at CCF 2020.
Greetings from Conscious Phoenix. In our Shaping Collaboration event, we look to explore the application of conscious design both locally and globally. Leaders from the University of Arizona Institute on Place, Wellbeing and Performance will discuss their latest endeavors on this front, and preceding this will spark an open discussion exploring how we can collaborate to achieve better outcomes in the built environment. Looking forward to collaborating with you.
Hi, we are Conscious Monterrey. We are bonded together in a city with diverse, responsible, friendly people who know how to work together as a team. We live in one of the largest cities in Mexico, and we have our particular challenges. We are interested in the air quality, the family, the mountains. We know that public safety and health are very important to stay strong in difficult times. We have a great capacity for adaptation, and today we better understand the value of a city with available public green spaces, efficient mobility, and harmonious design. The most important value of Monterrey is in its people, and we are the ones who can solve our needs locally. Through technology, environmental studies, data analysis on urban environments, and many other joint efforts, we can make better design choices that favors us all. Conscious Monterrey chapter of the Center for Conscious Design aims to engage policymakers, designers, researchers, artists, students, and citizens towards a productive outcome for the common good. This year, at our first festival in Monterrey, we will be hosting talks around built heritage and identity, the social roles of architecture, community participation, art, technology, and collaboration. Please come and join us.
Every time I get to interact with a fellow, see one of their videos, it just really reinforces why I love the CCD. But anywho, now I'm going to turn it over to Aishwarya.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, almost good night as well in some places, I guess. Well, thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you all. Right. As I reflect upon what Aydah and Tiffany really said, one thing becomes really clear. Every pixel, every space, every voice, every action and every break and every choice matters in a conscious city. And coming to Upali, well, we need to problem seek before we problem solve, and we need to knowledge seek before we create knowledge, of course. And as an embodiment of these very values, Upali Nanda's journey as an architect fuses design practice as HKS architects and research at cadre in the manner that best supports health and well-being. Over the last 2 years of our interaction, from an idol, she has become an inspiring collaborator as well as an endearing mentor to me and to all of us at Hume and the CCD as well. Well, it's always a pleasure to meet you, and it's always a pleasure to introduce you, Upali. Over to you.
I am so moved by this morning already that I don't know what I could say that has not been said already. Thank you, Adah and Tiffany, and to all the chapters, and Itai and Hume and Conscious Cities for setting the stage. If I say nothing at all from this point onwards, we would still have an incredible opening. But I'll share a few thoughts. In large part, I don't know if you've ever had that thought that to really start our journey on this fundamental rethinking, perhaps we need to change the building blocks of our thought process. In some ways, it's like rethinking and trying to understand the alphabet of our language again. As humans, it's fascinating, certainly as designers and architects, it's fascinating that we have this strange obsession with wanting to look into the future, to gaze into this crystal ball. I don't know how yours is doing. Mine has never served me very well. But it's something of a humbling exercise to see what we thought the future would look like and what it does. I love this cover from Reader's Digest in 1966 on what they thought the world would look like in 1999. Very little of this happened. And no one predicted social media, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. No one predicted big data and AI at that time. All in a span of 30 years. If you have some time, try to go on Google Image and do a search for what was written in the early 2000s on what 2020 would look like. Beautiful futuristic ideas, and certainly not what we're living through right now. So it's tricky as designers and planners and architects and city builders and policymakers. We are kind of in the business of trying to see this future, and you can't. What you can do is pivot to shape it. I love this quote by Arundhati Roy. Nothing could be worse than the return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal or gateway between one world and the next. It is a catalyst for action. And even if we don't know where it's going to make us land up, from everything I've seen this morning, it'll be with a collective consciousness, we hope. But in the last 7 months, there are 7 lessons that I've learned that I'll share with you. A few shifts that I've seen that will hopefully sustain. And we'll end with an alphabet, maybe a starting point for this conversation. The first shift, the lesson from COVID has been that containment and mitigation rely on systems, and our systems are broken. Secondly, we've realized that when we focus on physical safety at the cost of psychological safety, it doesn't work. The second huge lesson has been that things that are foundational to being human, access to light, air, nature, and fresh food, these fundamental human rights have somehow become a premium. Those are the things we are paying more for, wanting more, and we haven't even stopped to think, how did that happen? How did these things that are my right as a human become premium? How is it that a majority of the schools we live in don't have operable windows? That our apartments don't give us the room to breathe? How did we get there? The third lesson, and it comes down to a lot of what was discussed before, is we have understood and reclaimed the power of in-between spaces. Our streets, our balconies, our thresholds, we have held on to it. What we are starting to lose as our digital physical worlds have fused, to Tiffany's point, is we are starting to understand the power of in-between time, but we haven't really started reclaiming it yet. I love the idea of the 24/6, which is reclaiming space and time, because there was a lot that going from one place to another place gave us that when we blurred our boundaries, we lost. The fourth lesson, and for many of you who are city planners, there was a huge outcry against density early on. But our data, and a lot of the data out there, shows that density is not really the problem. Equity, yes. And even more so, density in interior spaces is an issue that we even stopped looking at or thinking about. And these are all lessons that we have to carry forth. We talked about this earlier as well. Reclaiming our corner stores, this hyper-local or move to local, and walking away from these large warehouses of absolute consumption. Perhaps that will stick because it's here to stay. It was all about flexibility. Everybody flexed. We had to be so adaptable. Hospitals had to manage for surge. Hotels had to shift. Workplaces had to shift. We showed extreme flexibility as an industry. But why did we need to change so fundamentally? What did we not have that we have to think about carefully as we go forward? And the seventh lesson, perhaps one that has personally affected me the most, is the lesson that fear and bias spread just as fast as a virus does, if not faster. And when our buffers like social connection, psychological safety, and cognitive reset, the things that we relied on as humans, get threatened, we make the way for contagions, whether they are coronavirus or whether they are our fear and biases, to spread. But all that said, in these 7 lessons, I think we're also starting to see these fundamental shifts that this conference exemplifies. First, maybe 2020 will be the year where we stop being human-centered and move to being living-centered, where we finally acknowledge that from microbes to the Amazon, all our systems are interdependent. It's a point that Adah made earlier. We are not at the center of this world. We are active contributors to an interdependent system. The second shift is from the physical versus digital to this digital reality that we are in. We cannot turn back the clock. There is a world we live in the footprint and another we live in the outprint. But we have to be so careful and so conscious on what these digital realities mean and the spaces we carve in both of these realities that are getting fused together. And as designers, a big shift in that means moving from purely aesthetics to synthetics. The disembodiment that our generation and the generations after us face because we can visually and cognitively be in a space that is very different from where we are physically, just like we are right now. I have been in multiple countries in multiple mind spaces from my small little house in Ann Arbor. So trying to understand and shift our thinking to what does it mean for our senses, to really designing to sensory systems that are not evolving just as quickly. If you ever have a chance, look at the journey of our Earth and look at how small a piece of that the human era is compared to millions of years of evolution. Unless we shift from pure aesthetics to synthetics, we run a risk of fundamental disembodiment. And finally, from a health perspective, I think the biggest lesson, and the one I hope we never forget, is this shift from hyper-individualism, where I am responsible for my health alone, to this humility in understanding that I'm actually responsible for your health directly, and you are responsible for mine. And unless both of us take our responsibilities, we cannot create or build our collective health. And that may mean communities perhaps being the glue between business and life and health. Maybe community-based ecosystems can support business and life continuity and not put them at odds. Maybe that's how we don't have that conflict between the eco and the ego that was spoken about earlier. And to do that, we have to start with the alphabet again. We have to start with the building blocks of our thought. And I'll throw out 3 words, 3 letters of the alphabet that I've been thinking a lot about just as a catalyst for the conversation over the next few days. First, rigidity is not going to get us very far. We have to think with agility and with agency. We have to ask about fundamental questions. Beautiful buildings are fixed and rooted and cannot breathe, they cannot move. Is that what our cities will look like with fixed assets? Or do we need to think about agility, the ability to move, the ability to shape shift and add and contract as we need to going forward? And what is our agency going to be as a community? Because if we can be agile and if we can be agents for the change, we will have power to make that change happen. This last year, our breath was held hostage. It was through the virus. It was through George Floyd. It was through the wildfires. Our breath was held hostage. And when breath is held hostage, nothing can move, nothing can thrive. And so breathability will be a fundamental building block. We can no longer have buildings that don't let us breathe, that make us live in prisons. Our buildings have to breathe, our cities have to breathe, our relationships between systems have to breathe. So breathability is going to be this fundamental block, I hope, so that we can be a living ecosystem again. And finally, there has been no lack of information, no lack of data, no lack of technology. And yet here we are, still battling with the loneliness epidemic, still battling with fundamental issues of health, physical and mental. It's because our information has lacked consciousness and our efforts have lacked coalitions. And perhaps if we decide, as we are through this conference, that we alone, any single one of us alone, cannot make a change, and without being extremely conscious to the ripple effect of every single action, we cannot make a responsible change. Maybe then we can move towards the reality we really hope to pave the path for. We can't predict it, but we can shape and be shaped by it. So with that, I would like to stop with this last thought, that at the end of the day, the piece that we have always strived to understand is our mind, the human mind. It's a city that we are yet to navigate. But how can we shape the cities we live in if we don't shape and be shaped by the minds that make the city? I am so excited about the movement that we are all starting here and so humbled to be part of it. Thank you and have a wonderful conference.
Thank you so much, Upali. Definitely ABC. That's where we need to be. So before we move on with the ceremonies, I would like to just show you guys a video which might answer or begin questioning conscious design in a science-informed manner.
Thanks so much, Aishwarya, and thank you to Upali for such an amazing presentation. So before I continue, I'm going to invite everyone to take a collective breath with me. I was a little bit nervous earlier, but I'm slowly mellowing. So now I'm going to go into a few of our last videos from our different chapters.
Hi everyone, I'm Trish Hanson here in Adelaide on Kaurna country in South Australia. Adelaide is a city built on an ancient place. It's been home to generations of Kaurna people for many thousands of years. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging leaders, and especially acknowledge their care and nurturing of this land and these waters that we live on and enjoy every day. I'd also like to pay my respects to First Nations elders from wherever you are in the world. Adelaide is now home to people from over 200 different cultures from across the globe, and we live mostly on the plains between the ocean and the hills, which is where we get most of our food. We are looking forward to sharing our Conscious Cities Festival 2020 program with you, and we are really looking forward to enjoying yours. Our program here is loosely based around questions, on the basis that questions are invitations to conversations, and that conversations are invitations to our future. We'll be having several town hall forums where we look at how we might build trust and empathy, as well as the ecosystem that shapes our creative and cultural life. We'll be having several forums with young people around what shapes their identity, and presentations to urban professionals around seeing Adelaide through the eyes of young people. We look forward to seeing you online during the festival and hope you enjoy the program.
Oh, city of Lahore, may your liveliness perpetuate forever.
The breeze of your streets allured me to be settled here. Pakistan's second largest city and provincial capital of Punjab. The city enriched in culture and history, portraying an evolution of architectural monuments and urban forms, ranging from royal palaces and gardens to domestic residences and public spaces, making itself historically important worldwide. The city, once called the City of Gardens, is more like a city of concrete and traffic now. Haphazard development, urban sprawl, burdensome infrastructure has dominated the city. Conscious Lahore chapter of the Center for Conscious Design aims to create urban awareness and address those citywide challenges that can lead us to a happy, healthy, and sustainable urban future. At Conscious Cities Festival 2020, Conscious Lahore comes up with theme Humankind Lahore, and we're looking forward to creating a rich dialogue between urban experts, having our 3 sessions on urban mobility, public spaces, and public safety. So let's together uplift the consciousness of our cities and elevate our values by creating meaning in our built structures, designs, spaces, and urban environment. Don't forget to join us on 22nd October 4 to 7 p.m. at Conscious Cities Festival 2020 to shape and be shaped.
Next, I'm going to share a couple images of posters from chapters who are so busy planning amazing events that they didn't get around to doing a video. So first, we're starting off with Toronto, and I'll just give you a couple minutes to look at each slide before I move on. Just a heads up, I encourage you to register. You can see them all on our event page. If you're local, if you're from far away, no matter what, we invite you to join us to share in the conversation. This one's coming to you from Milan, Italy. With Tel Aviv and Itai, if you want to see him again.
I can do a tiny pitch instead of a video. Come join us in the Tel Aviv Events, where we're speaking about agency in the city, agency to express ourselves artistically, personally, emotionally, politically, looking at stories of the people in the city and how they used it as a medium for expression. There's 3 events, would be great to have you there.
Awesome, thank you, Itai. Next, we have Lima in Peru, 5-day event. I encourage you to check it out. It is very, very action-packed. We're also coming to you from London in the UK, a 3-day event with intersections, connectedness, and ecosystems at the core. They have a great lineup of speakers. Here's a quick snapshot, but of course you can see more information on the events page. We also have Conscious Mumbai. They are our most recent chapter and have done an incredible job of creating 2 different events, the first on Monday, the second on Tuesday. And then, of course, I encourage you to come to New York. And now I have one final video before we enter into our closing talks. This is going to be our closing event on Saturday. So we want to, just as we're starting by inviting you to design your own code for being in the festival, we want to end with a meditation so that you can integrate consciousness into your own practice as well.
name is Erin, and I'm a mindfulness coach. I think a lot of people are already aware of the benefits of mindfulness and are actually keen on starting their mindfulness journey, but they may be holding back because they may not know how to start, or even if they have started, they may not know how to keep going with their practice.
My name is Anupam Yog. The Big Sit is an idea to mark Mindfulness Day, which is September 12th. And in an era where we're living in the world of a pandemic, we are quite blessed and frankly very fortunate to be able to get together in a social space. I feel that physical health and mental health are starting to get a lot of attention, but social health actually gets neglected. And in a world of physical distancing, social distancing becoming a norm, we almost felt it's extremely important to put emphasis on gathering physically, socially in one place and celebrating Mindfulness Day by practicing together.
So we see mindfulness not as a treatment or a cure, but more of a preventive approach to mental health care. And mindfulness is a way of life, and it's really a lifelong practice. So I hope through the Big Sit that more people would be inspired to pick up the practice of mindfulness and to be able to see mindfulness as a basic human capacity that we all can have, and that mindfulness can be practiced anytime, anywhere. And I hope that the Big Sit will gather more people together in a community to practice together, making use of urban spaces all around them to practice, whether independently or together as a group.
We live in an extremely stressful environment, and I think urban stress, as I call it, is particularly harmful because we are constantly assaulted by all kinds of stressors, whether there's noise pollution, whether there's air pollution. So I do think that it's become almost an unsustainable situation, which requires all of us as individuals to really think quite carefully about how we are dealing with the stress that we are assaulted with. In fact, in mindfulness circles, we have a joke: don't just do something, sit there. It may feel weird if you see a person cross-legged or just sitting on a bench with his or her eyes closed, but that is exactly what we hope to change. We find it quite normal if people in the streets are doing all sorts of things, but what if we were just able to sit silently for a few minutes while the world is still going on about us? And I think that's quite a beautiful image, and I hope that we can see more and more of that in our cities.
So if you haven't figured it out by now, between our speakers and our chapters, the thing about the Center for Conscious Design is that it really just can't be defined. It's not affixed to any one item, to a concept, to any one being, because we think that would go against the very core of what we believe. So I just want to say that we do not presume to know or take full ownership over the idea of conscious design or conscious cities, because we believe if we exerted that kind of power, that this would not be a grassroots movement. It would not be decentralized, it would not be humanized, and it would not be conscious. Because we believe that every breath we take as a center grows stronger with each voice. We believe that if we're going to design for experiences, all experiences, then we must be built of those experiences. In the same way you can't make diamonds out of dust, we believe you can't reimagine for people without those people at its core. So this is why we do our best to fertilize the growth of local chapters, giving them the network and platform they need to create their own localized spider webs. This is why we're constantly searching for means of intersectionality so that we can bridge subjective and objective truths to collectively deconstruct and reimagine our shared reality. We believe that we can and must do better. We believe that we have a shared responsibility as a people to create a world where nonprofits and charity don't need to stitch the gap between capitalism and governance. Instead, what if we had a world imbued with conscious design where those gaps are never created? What if design could instead enhance our well-being and equity and resilience and happiness instead of play catch up with the latest human rights abuse? Our fellows, as you've seen through the videos and hopefully we'll see through the coming week, have worked extremely hard to develop an amazing series of events unfolding throughout this next few days. The festival consists of over 40 events and will end with a virtual meditation, as I mentioned, on Saturday the 24th. Every chapter's events are organized by local fellows and experts in their city to look and address specific issues and areas of inquiry within their communities. So we're working towards that future, yesterday, today, and every day to come, and the festival's only beginning. I urge you to join us in supporting the Conscious Cities movement and our incredibly talented fellows by spreading the word of the Conscious Cities Festival, registering and attending a heaping scoop of Conscious Cities events. Pretend it's like a bin of ice cream and you just can't get enough. So thank you so much to Itai for all the late nights and inspiration, to our fellows who put their heart and soul and went above and beyond to make this festival a success. Thank you to our interns and our core team who have been working behind the scenes 24/7 to make this all possible. Thank you to Tiffany and Adah and Upali and all the speakers and partners in the festival. And thank you all for coming out and supporting the movement. I'm going to turn it over to Itai now.
Wow, what to add to such an event? Really, there isn't anything to add. I think this is our pleasure and our honor to listen to these speakers, to watch how the movement has grown, to see where every locality is doing something different. And this event really is, for us, this moment before we begin, before we set off on this journey of a week-long dialogue all around the world, figuring out who we are and where we want to be, and what does the city mean within this story. To anything else, we've been, we've had wisdom poured on us throughout this whole event by these three amazing speakers. Thank you so much, Aydah, Tiffany, and Upali. I can't wait to get this event out on YouTube so everyone can go to it whenever they want and find this wisdom. You've given us a lot to think about. You've given us a lot to aspire to. And thank you to everyone in the CCD. I just want to wish best of luck to everyone who is involved here. And I'm going to leave you with, after we've had all this calm, a bit of the spirit of what Conscious Cities Festival is meant to be. And with that, thank you and goodbye.
The installations that we're talking about today are born from the science of learning. They're born in the lab at universities all over the world about how children thrive, about how children learn.
People who are closer to the issues are closest to the solution. Who is in the room and who isn't? Who isn't in this space, right? So that seems like an easy question to ask. Under that question is something harder. Why aren't they in this space?
I think it's really important to go back to the fundamental problem. Why are we even building any of this?
Allowing youth to be able to walk into the space and see themselves. This is my neighborhood. I can influence my neighborhood. I can strengthen my youth voice. I can boost my social, political power in this space to influence policy.
As folks have argued for their buildings, argued for their bodies, argued for their homes, their playgrounds, their communities. And we have an opportunity as leaders, as thinkers, as creators and designers, as citizens, as human beings, to be informed by this and allow that to become a part of our subconscious and become a part of our conscious as a result.
That enriched environment, cities and structures that are built to foster and are conducive to help can enhance resilience.
This is a revolution not against a regime, not against corporations. It's actually a revolution against ourselves.
We need to problem seek before we problem solve. We need to knowledge seek before we knowledge create. Because a lot of the knowledge exists and it just needs that translator. It needs that vessel to become reality.
I don't want to wait for the iceberg. I want to get underneath the surface to say, well, how can we actually create health? and not just manage disease.
What is it about our institutions, our day-to-day life, our way of life, that makes democracy such a fragile thing right now, to this day? That is something I think we need to interrogate, all of us, really deeply.
We often talk about the outcomes we want for children as adults, but don't really think about how we care for this stage of childhood.
We don't want to just create spaces that will directly improve people's well-being, but we want to create spaces that allows people to help themselves improve their well-being.
It's a simple question. How will you build positive intent into the world?